Welcome to Full Focus. I'm Gloria Penner. Last week, Wall Street delivered another troubling report on the city of San Diego's finances. Moody's Investor Service downgraded the city's credit rating for the second time this year and warned that it might do so again. Confidence in the city's financial management has eroded, Moody's said. There are a few other problems, too, including a federal investigation into accounting irregularities and a hugely underfunded pension system. All of these monumental problems fall to the city manager. He oversees the city's $2 billion budget and its 11,000 employees. Yet very little light shines on this position that can have a critical impact on every city resident. In fact, if you ask them, few San Diegans seem to know who the city manager is or exactly what he does. Rebecca Tolan reports.
I know that he handles the administrative part of running the city.
Kind of a low-profile position, though, isn't it?
Yes, I believe the mayor does the political role and the city manager takes care of the day-to-day business.
I think he's in charge of things, that run the city and budgets and all of that kind of stuff. Is like he does the things that the mayor should be allowed to do and can't because of this form of city government.
Manages the city?
How does he do that?
Wow. And I used to work for a city government, too. I should know these things.
I believe the city manager coordinates the other positions like the Port Authority as well as possibly doing the business and administrative aspects of, like coordinating with the treasurer, etc.
He basically sets the budget and, takes care of making sure everyone gets paid, hiring and firing. I'm sure it's more complicated than that.
Do you know who the city manager of San Diego is?
No.
What does the city manager do?
I have not a clue, ma'am.
Who is the city manager of San Diego?
Is it McGrory? I think it's McGrory. Is it Mike McGrory? I think.
I can't remember. I used to know. I forgot.
Well, let me think. I should know this, and I did know it, but before the change.
Man, I should. Mr. Ubaragua?
Oh my God, I go to law school and I don't even know that. I could tell you who the DA is. I could tell you who the mayor is.
Lamont Ewell. That's it.
Well, Lamont Ewell is indeed the city manager. 4 months new on the job, he functions as our city's chief executive officer, controlling San Diego's purse strings and holding the power to hire and fire department heads from the chief of police on down. Lamont Ewell joins me in studio today to tell us more about what he does and how he's juggling the challenges before him. Well, thank you for being with me, Lamont Ewell. Welcome to KPBS.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Well, it seems that local residents are really a bit fuzzy on your responsibilities in local government. So why don't you clarify what is your role in relation to the city council and the mayor?
Okay. I actually work for the mayor and city council. They appoint the city manager, he or she, based on background and abilities. I work for them, and on their behalf, I translate daily policy into day-to-day activity. I manage the budget, a $2.4 billion budget, and I manage it on behalf of the mayor and council in making sure that we support the needs of this community. I manage the workforce of 11,000 people. We make sure that the funds of the city are invested, that the budget that the mayor and council adopt is actually being actualized, and that we're providing the services that they require of us. And in between then, I also manage the disciplinary activities should that occur within the city, and we help to, as I said, translate that daily or that policy into day-to-day practice.
How hands-on are the mayor and the city council? I mean, do you basically follow their orders? What is that relationship?
It's a very close working relationship, and yes, I take their policy objectives and I make sure that we translate them into day-to-day practice.
Well, that doesn't sound so much like the kind of debate that we're having these days over our so-called strong city manager form of government as opposed to a strong mayor form of government. I mean, if you are actually just implementing the orders of the mayor and the city council, then is that really a strong city manager form of government?
Well, I think the argument, quite frankly, is because I'm not elected, I'm appointed by the mayor and council, and the question is oftentimes whether or not that is direct accountability. If the public appoints the mayor or elects the mayor, they can also not vote for him the next time around if he or she are not doing what they had anticipated them to do. They cannot do that with me. I have to be removed by the mayor and council with 5 votes, and then on any given week I can be unemployed. But I think the issue of governance, though, quite frankly, is something that the voters should decide on. There are some cities throughout this country that operate with a council manager form of government, and there are some that use a strong mayor form of government.
Well, to help all those people who are going to vote on this in November, what are the advantages and disadvantages of the 2 different forms of government? I mean, let's teach a little bit.
I don't know if I'm the right person for this, because it would actually be a conflict of interest for me to really engage in that debate. But I think that there's going to be the opportunity for the public to be fully informed about the advantages and disadvantages of both. And at that point, it would be up to them to decide which governance structure they would prefer.
Okay, so I'm not going to ask you to engage in that debate. Just what would be the advantage of a strong mayor form of government?
It would be to center the authority, the decision to hire and fire around the person that the public ultimately elects. That would be one of the values. Okay. To help with priority setting by the mayor. He or she would have that responsibility to help set priorities on the day-to-day activity. That would be another advantage. We've got a very talented mayor, and so I'm sure that he would be very good at discharging his duties. And so when you talk about the disadvantages, some will argue that potentially you could have someone who is not as knowledgeable but who was popular and could then have that authority and misuse it.
Sure, so, and quite honestly, even if Mayor Murphy is reelected, this won't go into effect until 2006, so he'll only have 2 years left on the term, and then you're going to get somebody else.
That's correct. Yeah. That's correct.
All right, let's take the other side of the coin. I mean, I want to be fair because there are people out there who say, but the city council, city manager form of government, has been working, and obviously it's working now because you're in it, and you're hopefully being effective.
Well, I would hope that I'm being effective, and as you know, we have a number of challenges ahead of us. And with the mayor and council support, we look for opportunities to dismantle each of those challenges. But again, this is an issue, quite frankly, that the voters should weigh in on and decide on the pluses or minuses.
I think that one of the problems has been, as we sort of referred to in our little video segment, that although city managers are public figures, many of them have kept such low profiles that people really weren't acquainted with them, weren't acquainted with what they did. How would you describe your style as a city administrator and as a government official?
I think I'm more hands-on in my approach. I really love good governance. I love making sure that I'm kept abreast of issues, and I like being involved in day-to-day activities. So I think that I'm more hands-on oriented than, say, Michael Ubaraga, who was the previous city manager, and I'm probably somewhere between a Michael Ubaraga and a Jack McGorry. The people who opened on the video, they both pointed out, is it McGorry, is it Ubaraga, and then the last person did say Lamont Ewell, but I'm probably somewhere in between those two.
Well, just to clarify, Jack McGrory was city manager when Susan Golding was the mayor, and of course Michael Ubraga was your predecessor during Dick Murphy's term. I guess one of the issues really was the concern people say when Mr. Ubraga left. Problem was he was not accountable to the public, and therefore we don't really know what it was he was doing in his job. Are you accountable to the public?
I'm accountable to the mayor and council. I like to believe I'm accountable to the public, yes, because I want to believe that I take stewardship very seriously, and when I'm making decisions each day, I want to do it on behalf of the public, the entire city, and making sure that we're providing the best set of solutions to provide the best level of service to this community. That is my objective. Yes.
And what about being more visible? I mean, here you are you planning to be more visible so people will get to know you and hopefully trust you?
Sure. When it's appropriate, yes. But keep in mind, I am not the elected leader. I should not go out and try to stand ahead of the elected leaders who ultimately make those policy decisions and provide that direction. I'm the implementer. I translate that policy and I turn it into day-to-day practice, and that's what they hold me accountable for.
Well, the City Council obviously had great hopes for you. They promoted you 4 months ago, deciding not to do a national search when your predecessor left office. We had then, and we still do, have critical and complicated issues facing the city. When you agreed to take the job, just how aware were you of how dire the city's financial circumstances were?
Well, I don't know if anyone was fully aware of the entire financial picture. You know, we were chugging along. We knew that we had some problems with our pension system. But what we didn't know were such things as the cedar fire that occurred in the October-fall period of 2003. We did not know that the state was going to come in and shift funds to balance its budget. So those two things alone accounted for over $20 million that we did not anticipate having to expend. So that, combined with a number of other issues that were coming on in this confluence of issues all at once, it was undaunting. But
$20 million, though, seems like a rather small proportion of money when you consider that the budget is over $2 billion.
That's true.
That isn't what threw the city into dire financial circumstances.
No, and in fact, we're not truly in dire financial circumstances. Where we are is the city has an $817 million general fund operation. And it's the general fund, however, that pays for fire, police, it paves streets, it cleans parks, it takes care of all of our parks, it takes care of our libraries, all of the bread and butter type things that people really rely on, that's paid out of the general fund, and that's why it's always under such heavy pressure, financial pressure. And then when you have a shifting of those revenues to the state to help offset it, even when it's only $20 million, it's a pretty large number that you have to still, try and make up for. So that was part of our challenge at the time.
But you said that the financial circumstances are not dire. I'm wondering then about what happened with Wall Street's reaction by the downgrading from Moody's Investor Service.
There are a number of things that are probably driving that. Number one is the city has always had very narrow reserves, and Moody's was one of the ones. In fact, all three have made that statement that they were concerned that with some of the obligations of the city, the pension fund having to increase the full actuarial value was going to be a problem. Two, with narrow reserves, the unappropriated reserves, you could not respond to such things as the cedar fire and deplete those revenues. So that was a major concern for Moody's as well.
Just to clarify, when you say reserves, you're talking about like money in the bank that is not earmarked for anything.
That's right.
Okay.
These are unappropriated reserves that you use for rainy days when there are unexpected issues that come up and you have to respond. So you keep, just as you would in your own personal bank account, you would probably keep money set aside to deal with emergencies that you don't anticipate.
And so when you say narrow reserves, what are you talking about? You're talking about $10 million, $21 million?
We had roughly 3% of the general fund, which meant that it would be about $24 million. Most cities of this size usually have anywhere between 5% to 10%, and we were at 3%. And so they had a concern about that. And
why was that? Why did we have such narrow reserves?
It was just something that the city, because of the amount of revenue that we bring into the city and the level of service that we want to apply, it's pretty hard to deny a certain level of service to shift it into an unappropriated reserve.
I see. So instead of cutting programs, the money was used to keep those programs going.
That's right, because most of the programs that are set throughout the city are very important to this community.
And that's a decision that's made by the City Council.
Ultimately, the mayor and council decide on the policy objective of how to spend it. But I have to tell you, over the last 4 years, that's when we actually have seen the progress of increasing those revenues, actually over the last 3 to 4 years, because even prior to that, they were at a lesser amount than that. And so this year, based on council and the mayor's direction, we've actually gone from 3% to 4% in the unappropriated reserves. So we are making strides.
4%, how much is that, about $40 million?
4% would be approximately a little over $32 million.
$32 million, all right. Is that what you're doing now to try to improve Wall Street's view of San Diego finances, or is there anything else?
Well, there are a multitude of things that we're doing. That being one of them, we're increasing our unappropriated reserves, as we've just done, from 3% to 4%, where we put together a strategy to deal with the pension fund. Based on mayor and council direction, we're looking at pension obligation bonds to help close that $1.1 billion unfunded liability.
Pension obligation bond means that when the city has to pay back the bond, the interest on the bond, that the city is obligated for the interest on the bond.
We're obligated to make the payments, but we take that cash infusion, we put it into the retirement system, and hoping that the market is still favorable, then you see an increase above the assumption that we make that we need an 8% return.
Is that going to be enough to resolve this critical situation with the pension fund?
I think that's a first start. That combined with full actuarial payments that are made on an annualized basis, which we will begin next year. Keep in mind, we went from $85 million last year to $130 million this year, in which we made that payment on July 1st. And then next year, we'll go to full actuarial funding.
But there are those who feel that the actuarial funding, the changing the composition of the pension board, they are political fixes, and that the only real way to be able to resolve the situation is to start cutting benefits, the pension benefits, and to start cutting back on the employees that work for the city of San Diego, in some way reducing the costs before you start borrowing more money through bonds.
Sure, and I would beg to differ with regard to whether or not the steps that were taken initially are just political maneuvers. That's not true whatsoever. There was a real need to take a look at the structure of the board and to put a majority of people who are outside the city as opposed to internal people within the city. That took place, and I think that's very appropriate. I think it's very appropriate to move to a different amortization schedule, and I think that that's going to be key, as well as then also moving to full actuarial funding.
Well, let's put some worry warts to rest then.
I'd love to.
Is the city heading for bankruptcy?
No, the city is financially solvent. There are a number of things that we need to take care of. We have a lot of unmet needs, a lot of deferred maintenance that need to be addressed, and we're developing a strategy to start addressing those things. But this city will be solvent, and it will be here long before you and I have passed on. The city will remain. And even with the 3 rating agencies having downgraded the city, one of the problems the city has had is that it's always had some of the highest ratings of any city of equal size. Even when we were downgraded, we're still one of the highly rated cities in this country. Moody's themselves, when they downgraded us to AA3, their definition of AA3 is very strong credit worthiness.
But Moody's was also critical about the delay in completing an audit of the city's books.
That's
when
true.
is that audit going to be completed, and what is it costing the city?
Right now, we estimate that it's going to cost us a little over $1 million. We're hoping that it will be completed by September. However, I don't want to just say that it will be completed. We've asked KPMG, who's doing the audit, to come in and scrub our books, look everywhere, be more comprehensive, do an audit that most cities don't even go through such scrutiny on, because we want to demonstrate not just to the financial market but to this community that everything is in fact in order. So we've asked them to take the time and attention and the care to do it.
But at this point, I mean, the audit is important, and it's also important because there's a federal investigation now of the finances of the city because of some errors and or omissions in city financial reports that went along with selling bonds. Irregularities, they're called.
Well, yeah, those are actually merging too. Our 2002 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, that's referred to as a CAFR in the industry, but it did in fact have errors in the footnotes, and we discovered those errors ourselves, and then we disclosed them publicly. That, as we're obligated to do, we disclosed that we did have errors. To avoid having that problem occur in 2003, we then brought in KPMG to just do a complete audit, and they're doing what they refer to as a zero-based or from the ground up audit, where they just start all over again. And that's why it's taking a while, and that's why it's costing more than any of us would like to see. But I think it's money well spent just to put to bed the fact that our finances are in disarray.
But there is that cloud of a federal investigation. I mean, it's sitting there.
It's sitting there. We have been cooperating fully with the Securities Exchange Commission. They are looking at our disclosure practices, and even as far as that's concerned, I point out that the Mayor and Council actually hired Vincent & Elkins, a very highly reputable firm out of Washington, D.C., before the Securities Exchange Commission announced that they were doing a review, to come in and look at our processes and to make sure that we were disclosing and doing the things appropriate. So they're finishing their report as well sometime in September, and that will be commended to the Mayor and Council as well. So I've said before, it has been a confluence of issues that have occurred. It's unprecedented in any city that I've ever worked for, but we're taking each issue, we're addressing it, we're making sure that we come up with a comprehensive approach to resolving it, no just band-aid approach, and making sure that we don't have to deal with it again.
I want to return to what we were discussing before, because to a lot of people the issue really is salaries. Mm-hmm. The issue is that employees' salaries and benefits typically make up the bulk of the city's general fund. And I know that you're currently facing negotiations with various employee unions, including the police and the firefighters, municipal employees. So what progress is being made to cutting personnel costs?
We will be in negotiations with all 4 bargaining units beginning this winter month because the contracts expire in fiscal year 2006, which will be calendar year 2005, July 1st, 2005, but it's our fiscal year 2006. And we will be at the table to discuss with them several things, many of which are the things that you have brought forth. But, Gloria, the problem that I think that we have in this city is that if you compare city salaries to other jurisdictions around us, not even across the state, but just in the local area, we're very competitive, and we fall somewhere in the middle. In fact, with fire and police, you take the top 10 cities in this country, or in this state.
So we're paying very well.
Well, no.
We're not.
With fire and police, if you take the top 10 cities in this state, we're somewhere around number 8 in our salaries. So the cost of keeping good quality people is a challenge for us. The need for us to curtail some of our benefits is probably something that we're going to have to do. But we also have to balance that with being competitive with the rest of the environment if we're going to attract good quality people.
Somewhere I read, and we only have a minute left, but $35 million is what it would cost in order to give the increases that are expected this coming year?
Yeah, in this current fiscal year, because we're in the last year of a third-year contract, it was about $30 million. That is true.
Well, finally, we only have 30 seconds left. The flow of information from the city manager's office to the council and mayor has been a question of concern. What are you going to do quickly to fix it?
One of the things that I am committed to is making sure that we are an open government, that we are disclosing any and everything, and that this community in particular is fully apprised of all the activities that are going on. And we have a strategy that we're developing now to make that happen.
Well, I hope you'll come back and keep us apprised of your work as it progresses. And thank you very much, Lamont Ewell.
Thank you, Mrs. Penner.
And that's all the time we have for tonight's Full Focus. For more about the city manager, visit our website at kpbs.org. And we enjoy hearing from you. Write to us at the address on the screen. And tune in again Thursday night when we explore the controversies surrounding the cross on Mount Soledad. Tomorrow evening we will bring you the Republican Convention. For KPBS, I'm Gloria Penner. Good night.